You know, the other day I was on the internet browsing to try to tell somebody, you know, they wanted to know how to solder copper pipes. They were putting a water softener in, and they wanted to know how to sweat copper. And I said, well, there's got to be a good one on YouTube, and went to YouTube, and, you know, I really couldn't find a good one. So I thought, you know what, I'm an old plumber. It's been 40-some years ago, but hey, you never forget how to solder copper. And by the way, at the end of this, I'm going to show how easy it is. I'm going to blindfold myself, and I'm going to solder a copper pipe blindfolded. If you're going to solder pipe, though, or sweat pipe is the correct terminology, you're going to need a torch. You can buy a torch like this at Lowe's or someplace like that. It uses MAP gas, and this has a self-igniter on it so that when I push the button, it immediately lights up. You're also going to need a tubing cutter, and you know, you can buy a cheaper tubing cutter at Lowe's, or you could go to a plumbing supply house if you think you're going to need a tubing cutter in the future. You need one that'll typically cut up to 1-inch pipe, which is called a rigid number 15, and it'll cut up to 1-inch pipe. You're going to need some soldering flux, and I went out and bought some at Lowe's. You're going to need some sand cloth, and I'll show you why you're going to need that. You're going to need a cleaning brush to clean the fitting. You're going to need an acid brush to put on the flux. And you're going to need a tape measure if you're going to be measuring where to cut. The first thing we're going to do here, I've got copper pipe sticking out of the wall. I'm going to tear off maybe a 8 to 10 inch piece of sand cloth. One of the keys to sweating copper pipe is to make sure that it's clean, nice and shiny. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take and sand this pipe all the way around, nice and clean. See how that looks? Another thing you want to make sure of is that you deburr the pipe. There's a deburring tool that you simply put in here and deburr the pipe. You get the little ridge, you knock off the little ridge so that the water flows a little bit better if it's deburred. And it comes out like that, and you're just simply going to put it in there and deburr it. Now, I wouldn't advise you to stick your finger back in there because it's going to be sharp and it might cut you, so don't do that. We've got the pipe clean. The next thing we need to do is we need to clean the fitting. So we're going to clean the fitting like this, turn it in a clockwise fashion, and stick it in as far as you can, clean it. Do the same thing to the other side, and clean it. Make sure it's, these two things are essential, cleaning the pipe and the fitting. In this case, we're going to sweat another small piece on here, and so I'm going to cut a small piece off of here. What you do is you tighten that, not too tight, and then you go all the way around. Sometimes the cheaper cutters, it'll just spiral around here. So if you just do one round, it's not going to do that. And there it is. We cut that off. Now again, I'm going to sand this piece of pipe. And then I'm going to deburr that again. And I'm going to put my deburring tool in here and deburr the pipe. Now the next thing I'm going to do is apply flux. You don't want to get too much, but you don't want to get too little. So what I do is I get some flux on the brush here, and you only want to put it as deep as the fitting is. So you don't want to go all over the pipe. Just do what the depth of the fitting is. Got a nice thin layer of flux on the pipe. And you don't want to get a ton of it because it's going to run out and really make a mess. And I'm going to take on the inside here, I'm going to take and put flux in the fitting. And make sure you get every square inch covered because it's important that you do that so that the solder can adhere. Now I'm going to do the other side. And there we go. Now I've got to put some flux on the pipe that's coming out of the wall here. I've got that done. And now I'm going to put this together. Make sure it goes all the way in. Now we're ready to solder. You're going to need some solder, and you want to make sure it's not the solder that you use for electrical. It's a plumbing solder. And what I always do is I bend the tubing, the solder, into an L like this because it's easy to work with when you do that. I'm right-handed, so I'm going to use the solder in my right hand. I'm going to use the torch in my left hand. And when you're applying heat to a fitting, you don't want to apply it up here. You want to apply it here to the fitting so that the solder can literally be sucked in by the heat. And it doesn't take a lot of solder to do this, and you want to be very, very careful that you don't overheat the fitting. It's just as bad to overheat it as it is to underheat it. So here we go. We're going to put the heat right about here, and I'm going to test if it's getting hot enough. When you see that solder starting to melt, when it starts to melt, I move it to the other side. And I got some nice even heat around there. And you see how I pulled that solder in? I like to use a rag to wipe it off because it looks pretty. Now, I'm going to go over here to the other side. It's already a little bit warm. I'm going to test it, see how that... See that solder suck right in? And notice how I took the heat off right away. Got a nice even bead around there. I'm going to wipe it off. It just makes the job look professional. It doesn't work any better, but it sure looks a lot prettier when you wipe it off. What I advise is you just have to stop the water flow. Figure it out. If you have a second story and the water is dripping down, what you're going to have to do is flush the toilets, open the faucets, let the water evacuate the pipes before you start soldering. Otherwise, you'll never get a seal, because what will happen, the water will start boiling, and as the solder starts to set, it'll blow a piece out, and you'll have an opening there that'll always leak. So it's got to be completely dry. And then I'm going to put on a blindfold. And I'm going to make sure my solder is bent for me, like I want it. And my torch is here, my solder's here. I should be ready. I'm going to put this blindfold on. It's a trash bag. I can't see through this thing, by the way. And I can't see out the bottom either. And you know, the pipe's hot, so I'm going to have to feel with my torch. There we go. Okay, so I'm going to kind of feel around where I'm at here, okay. I think I'm, there I can feel the fitting, okay. I think I'm on there. Okay, I think I feel the solder running. This probably isn't going to be too pretty, but let's see how it looks. Well, the solder is all the way around, and it's kind of ugly, but by golly, I soldered it blindfolded. Imagine what you can do with your eyes open. The key is, and I'm going to repeat this again, clean the pipe really well, clean the fitting really well, apply an even coat of flux, not too much, and don't get the fitting too hot because you'll boil the flux out and the solder won't adhere. It's simple. You heard it here, folks. Let me know how it works.